Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ripple Intent Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kyle McCroskey, and with me, as always, is John Grant. John, please go ahead, say hello.
Hey, listener, welcome back.
I think we're up to two listeners, so you can make it plural from now on. We've been slowly growing and expanding, which is pretty cool, even with some of the changes and where the podcast gets hosted, just because of Apple and everybody else. But we continue to see it go up. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we're two. Anyway, nobody cares about that. What is this and what is Ripple Intent? So Ripple Intent is a nonprofit organization based out of Denver, Colorado, that provides events in cities across the country, monthly, every other month, and then also once a year we do a big event. Next year's will be in Dallas. And why do we do this? Because we have found that we want to have and provide an opportunity for people to have conversations to make them better people, better teammates, and better leaders. And along this journey that we've been on for a long time, we come across a lot of very fascinating, interesting, and unique people. And I'm really excited for our guest today because we crossed paths the very first Ripple Intent event way back in, I want to say 2011, and we have been intertwined ever since, which has been a lot of fun. So please, Rex, thank you. Rex Miller, thank you for joining us today. Thanks for being here, and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I am too. And part of it is you know too much about me, so that has me a little bit worried about where we might go.
Well, you've done so much. I mean, you've written multiple books, you've spoken on multiple things, you've worked intensely with tons of large projects and different organizations and companies. And I mean, your journey is all over the place and amazing at the same time. And it's a pleasure to have you. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, guys.
Yeah. So why don't we go back I mean, like I mentioned, we crossed paths when you came to our first event back in 2011 in Oregon, but you got interested in what you're doing now even before that. So can you kind of take us through that journey of what got you to there and possibly even up to where you are today?
Well, I'll go back, way back, and make it brief, but I moved to Texas in 1977 as a tennis professional, working as a youth leader for a new church that was starting. And then I met a girl, and then I needed a real job. And Southwestern Bell was going through some dramatic changes, from analog switches to digital switches, from heavy private office to open plan to divestiture and reconfiguring. So I was hired as the first interior project manager. And what that did for me is it gave me in 3 years, I gained a lifetime of experience. We imploded a hotel. We built a 38-story headquarters project, 14-story comptroller, renovated 2 20-story buildings. We were Herman Miller's third largest client. And during that time, it was 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And then I left and went into the contract furniture side of the equation. Then when the recession hit, or the dot-com crash, moved back into more of the architectural products, the pre-manufactured walls and floors. And then fed up with the waste in that system and the artificial premium, then started researching it, which led to books, which led to consulting, which led to where we are today. So that's the brief history.
So somewhere along that journey, you got interested in the people side of the world.
Yes.
Because that wasn't there initially.
Well, it was initially. So at Southwestern Bell, I was certified in DISC in 1978, but it was all paper stuff, all manual. I have this, learner is one of my CliftonStrengths. So this curiosity, relator is another part of the strengths that I've got. And I still have over 100 of those profiles from 1978. Input is another one of my traits. So you don't throw away things. So I got interested, but it was more that intellectual side. It wasn't really to do better with people. It was more that curiosity side. But I needed it when the dot-com crash hit. So when I got out of the experience with Southwestern Bell, that gave me so much in terms of leadership, team building, crisis management that I very quickly was able to go up the ladder. But each of those decisions I made was more about the next step on the ladder than whether it aligned with me or not. We moved from Virginia to Texas in the summer of '99. I was the vice president of a company, office furniture dealer, planning to retire in 10 years. The dot-com crash hit, and that exposed everything that was misaligned in my life. Part of it was health. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am today. I went from a salary that would at least buffer me to no income at all as a commission salesperson, close to bankruptcy. 5 times was in a week of bankruptcy. Wasn't a good dad. Was not a present husband or a supportive husband. I was just fighting to survive and intense, scared, all that stuff. And it left an impact on my kids. It took my oldest son 10 years for us to repair the damage of that time. But in 2000, when I came in to the office one day and found out that they didn't need a vice president of sales, they needed sales. And I had 2 choices, to leave or go into commission sales. Now Discover Your Strengths came out. I went through, light bulbs went out, all the light bulbs about why I was naturally good at some things and loved doing it, why some things I was good at, but was a strain and a drain. I had to rebuild from the ground up. So I decided to just shift my energy towards those things I enjoyed, which was tackling complex challenges with colleagues. That was it. That's the formula that I found, which led to all kinds of amazing things for me, not only in sales, rebuilding, but in what I do today. And then I started working with how do we bring this into the project teams that we were doing. I ran across a company called Core Clarity, which, Kyle, you're very familiar with those guys, and we brought those in early into Ripple Intent. They gave a shorthand, a way of understanding this very robust, complex system of CliftonStrengths, 33,600,000 combinations of those top 5, which is the beauty of the system, but also the Achilles heel. It's most people, they just walk away with some individual insight, but not moving to transformation and not being able to use it easily on teams. Well, that's what Core Clarity did. They helped us do that. And then moving to consulting on team dynamics, leadership development with a team out of DC. So today I've looked at or worked with more than 19,000 people on their top 5 strengths, in hundreds of teams in all kinds of situations. And that's where I get the most pleasure and most joy is, helping unlock stuff that was already inside. In 2014, we started looking at education, and a new piece to the puzzle came in, and that was Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk in 2005, Are Schools Killing Creativity? And then we started hearing about this childhood capacity of genius that 98% of kids have. By the time we become adults, only 2% have it. So the combination of an assessment that I say gives me a roadmap back to that genius capacity I had as a kid, but lost it over time. It makes it now so much easier to go back and recapture that and replug into it, learn how to play to your strengths, learn how to master those strengths and master the shadow side that comes into it. It just changed the game. And so I've been working on this consistently to the point now where we have our own software, our own process, our own system. And my goal is to totally turn upside down the traditional assessment training approach to allow more people to go from insight to transformation. So I just kind of monopolized your airspace here.
No, you're fine. And the question I always get is, so of those 19,000 people that you've worked with on their strength finders, which are the right top 5 strengths people should have?
Yes. And that's what we should focus on. Yeah. It's a great question because I get asked that all the time. especially when we do these archetypes, whether it's core clarities or Gallup's or ours. I don't have this category of strengths in mind. How do I get those? And the Gallup research is pretty clear. The strengths don't tell you what you'll do well at, they tell you how you'll do it well. And then when you combine that with the research that the two Stanford professors, Burke and I can't remember, no, Bennett and Burke, I think it is, they started finding kids coming into Stanford that wanted to find, quote, their why and their purpose. And this research really binds the two, makes it so powerful. It almost doesn't matter what you focus your energy on. If you enjoy it and you achieve mastery and you're playing to your strengths, that's the golden ticket right there. So you don't have to go off and see, should I be an architect or should I be an attorney or should I be whatever? Kyle, as you've said, I've got this really unique mix of stuff that all started as being a project manager. Did I choose to be a project manager? No, it was a paycheck that I needed because I wanted to get married. Did I learn to master it? Yes, indeed. Did I now use my strengths to do that? Absolutely. Can I apply those same strengths to learning how to write a book, to build a business, create a software company? Absolutely. But the key is mastery gives you that confidence, experience, that life reality, dealing with those life realities. Instead of trying to go find your why, we talk about, let's find out the who side. Who are you at your best? What environment can you go into that demands the best out of you? And then how do you close the gap daily? Those are the three pieces to it.
Oh boy. I mean, easy.
Simple, not easy. Simple, yes. Easy,
That's
no.
better.
Yeah. Simple, yeah. It is so simple. We just miss it. Every great epic story that you ever hear about, whether it's Luke Skywalker, it's all about, who am I really? There's this thing inside of me that, Neo, that, the splinter in your mind, this thing I think I'm not fully tapping into. I don't really know what it is. Then you go on this big epic journey with villains and dragons and all of this stuff. It's the hero's journey. It's the universal story. So you don't avoid the villains and the dragons, but it sure helps to know what you're aiming for, what that best self that you're aiming for is. And so it's not easy, but it is simple.
One of the things I love about this, and really where you've kind of even taken Genius Spark as well, is that there's this internal mastery. Let me understand how I'm wired, and then how do I use that, right? Yeah, but you're also learning how to communicate it to other people. So back to the point of, how do I apply this in a team setting? I think that's one of the areas where people get lost pretty quickly. They go, all right, well, it's kind of cute for me to figure out what's going on inside my head and in my heart. Well, how do I share that with other people so they know, so they can help me be my best, right? So that learning how to communicate, I think, is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The other part too is we don't believe in long all-day workshops with manuals. We believe in getting there's three things we need to know, right? I want to know what I look like at my best. I want to know how I get in my way. I want to know the unique differences in you, learn how to appreciate it and work better together with you. Once we know those three things, then how do we build it into the process instead of making it an add-on to what we do? So part of what you're asking is that you've got a paragraph, we call it a genius paragraph, of what you look like at your best. Part of that is the manager could take a little bit of time and say, John, hey, share your genius paragraph and why you relate to this. Then the next part of the conversation can easily be, Kyle, what part of that genius paragraph that John was talking about do you see most common in John? Now, that's it. That's the process, is your self-awareness, other people's awareness about it, confirming everybody, and I could ask you, John, Well, I'll ask you, John, what's your go-to strength and why? Which of your top 5 strengths do you feel is your go-to strength and why?
Oh, we're a live question. Love it. Because this is all about me. So
Yeah.
I'd say the one that honestly shows up for me the most is probably responsibility. Both
What order is it? What order is it in your?
That's number 4, actually.
Number 4. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That most of the time the number 1, but responsibility is number 4. Now we can go into some of the reasons because responsibility has high emotional energy around it. So there's this kind of moral or sense of ownership side that comes with it, which is different than the cognitive load. We know that cognitive load is different than emotional load, and emotional load is much higher. So you've got this higher energy draw with responsibility. And so what a great question to ask in a group environment and for everybody to unpack and talk about, well, yeah, I see that. I see that when you say you're going to do something, it's important. And then you can quip back and says, yeah, and when you tell me you're going to do something, I take that as locked and load. I'm expecting that it's going to happen the way you do. And if you don't, remember, blue relating, when somebody doesn't follow through and do what they say they're going to do, that feels like a relational snub to some degree. And now there's a great conversation to have. So Kyle, I'll flip the question. Which of your 5 do you want to work on the most and why?
So for me, I have 2 that often come out under stress. One of them, big one, is deliberative. And so that's the one that, and it really is. And I say stress.
Buzzkill one.
Yeah. Beyond, it's more than that.
Yeah,
It's a
Kyle can really
superpower
be a
buzzkill.
Yeah, right. Understand.
Oh yeah.
Well, and so now you've brought up a whole nother great conversation. So that's the kryptonite paragraph. And we know, so a lot of managers work on what we call weakness, those things down. But really, my experience, and I've been doing this a lot and a long time, managers and leaders don't mess up because of the gaps, their blind spots. They mess up because of their strengths, overused under stress, or lack of how others are experiencing it. Those are the 2 Achilles heels I run into. So another great conversation is how. So we'll talk to Kyle. So how does deliberative get in your way under stress and why?
It's very simple. If I'm surprised by anything, I will go into the analysis of the 30 ways that this surprise will be detrimental in some way, shape, or form to me, my team, my peers, our processes, whatever. I'll immediately go dark.
Yeah.
And if that's fine to do internal, but when that's external, watch out. It's a rough, talking about buzzkill when the boss is ranting and raving about something that just surprised them.
Now, if you had just this simple conversation on a team and you shared that, now I've got a way of first understanding when you get into that, all the doors are shut down. And I might have some language. I said, Kyle, I'm feeling some buzzkill here. Is there some stress? Now I can help you be your best self because you've given me some permission just by sharing your awareness that this is a problem. And what we typically find, and that's the value of the kryptonite, where you craft your paragraph of how you get in your way. Everybody else knows it. It's not a surprise to anybody, right? But now that you've articulated it, now you know it, now you're giving some permission, now you can develop bridging language on that. My son has, for me, he's analytical, I'm strategic. So I'll quiz you guys on this. Where's the possible disconnect or misalignment between a dad who's strategic with achiever and a kid who's analytical?
Well, my first thought goes to dad is going to provide a lot more advice than the kid wants.
Totally. Right. Yeah. And
a lot
more.
And
when I ask him to do something or I give him advice, do I give him kind of guidelines on it?
That's where he can use his analytical. You just give him the high level and let him go think about the detail.
But what he really wants is to know what my expectations are, what success looks like, and all of that. And I typically just throw it over the wall and say, hey, you figure it out. Which then he's spinning his wheels wondering, is it the right thing? Is it what dad wants? And he's got 3 blue strengths too. So you add the relator side to it and the harmony side. So there's lots of opportunities for us to collide. But he's got a code word. He said, "Dad, you dusted me. I know this is what you want, but I have no clue how you think I should do this." So we have language now, but a lot of it is he knows my kryptonite better than most people because he lives with it. But we've got language, and he can pause me, and I don't have to react to it. And he doesn't have to flounder around and say, what are the right words to say? So imagine teams having that together. Now,
So
Kyle, go ahead.
So we're talking a lot about CliftonStrengths for those who haven't taken it. It's another assessment. It's a really fascinating assessment. We've talked about it before on this podcast. For one question though, comes to mind is, so you reference your son. At what age does the assessment make sense? I mean, is this for kids? Is this teens?
15.
Are we talking 15 and up? Okay.
15 and up, but there's a junior version of it too called Strengths Explorer from 11 to 14. We used that when my son Tyler went from elementary school to middle school and came home. He's the easiest, most compliant of all the three kids. And then his first couple of weeks of middle school, Lisa calls me up and says, "I'm not putting up with this for a year." And of course, I'm not sure what this is. And I said, "Well, honey, what is this?" And she said, "It's Tyler. He's a bear. I make a snack for him. He doesn't want it. I ask him for help, and he's uncooperative." So my mind's going off, drain or gain. Remember, when you're playing to your strengths, you're energized. When you're not, you're drained. So we gave him the assessment, and oh my gosh, it all came out. He's got a very tight circle of friends, like 2, and they weren't in his class. He's very much wants to control his own learning and his own pace, and he doesn't want to do simple things. So he was bored, and the social engagement, he's got his top 7 strengths at one time were green, and deliberative, intellection, analytical, ideation, strategic. So you could see where new people I don't know, not psychologically safe, regimented program. So we pulled him out and homeschooled him. That was another fun phone call from my wife. 2 weeks later, I'm on the road, and she says, "Well, let's homeschool." Now, I'm a strategic achiever. We already started the school year. I already bought an instrument. It's kind of like I'm trying to figure out, well, how do we make what we've already decided to do work? And then I paused and listened. And then the beauty of it was when they were on my wife, her top 7 are green. My son, top 7 are green at the time. Relators now popped up in there. And it was the educational experience for Tyler, our youngest, versus the other 2, night and day. It was totally positive for him. So yeah, these things matter, and you can pick it up, and managers can pick it up. You're talking to an employee, and if they lean in and their eyes brighten up, you're tapping into a strength. But if they lean back or deadpanned, or even, you can see the expressions of whether you're tapping into a strength or not. And if they're not, it doesn't mean they don't do it. It just means let's have a little conversation. What do you find difficult about this? Where's the pushback? That's a lot of the training for managers is to open the door to say the goal is, going back to John, your or maybe it was Kyle's question, which strengths are the ideal? How do I help you craft this role in a way that you feel like you can play to your strengths? And we're not trying to be experts in the strengths. We're trying to have that baseline, but just be a guide in helping them own it, see it, instead of the manager being the solution provider and the babysitter. That's part of the goal, is to get more of that ownership back onto the employee, simply by knowing this is what I do best. This is how I do what I do best. Here's how I'm going to apply it here. Here's what I do better. Make it that kind of a conversation.
So I'm going to go back. You just said craft a role to align with your strengths, but I've hired someone to fulfill a job. They have job responsibilities.
Right.
So what you're saying is let's upend that model.
No, what I'm saying is that a lot of jobs have a fixed job description. Now, when you start looking at what is the job really about, what's the value we need to the company with this role, now you can talk about and ask the person, how would you apply your analytical, or how would you apply your ideation? What does it look like? Paint a picture of how you can achieve these things with the strengths you have. Not giving them an out that, oh, well, I don't have achiever, so I can't get anything done. That's not it. But it's helping them process through how are they going to adapt, how they're wired to play to their best to get that job done. So think of the movie Moneyball. It's we're not looking for people who are ideal superstars that come in with, we're looking for people who can get on base. We're looking for people who can move it forward with what you've got to bring to the table. Now, it's not a perfect fit. You'll have some people that can't go down that journey. And so oftentimes what you see, and I'll say maybe more than half the time, is what you see is someone who's locked in to what you would stereotypically see in those strengths. Their upside is right there. And you'll see that they're just not going to, they don't know how to use intellection and analytical and deliberative to get outcomes within a week done. They've not learned how to use that and master getting things done like that. And so now it's do they have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? And if they have a growth mindset, then they can adapt. If they have a fixed mindset, it is what it is what it is. But you can tell that pretty quickly, right? With somebody with a fixed or growth mindset. So if it's a fixed mindset, those 5 strengths, that role, if they don't align, then you're pushing rope uphill.
I've always wondered, because this stuff inside and out, and to go from the early days of project management and mastery of that to where you are today, I'm like, the thing that keeps coming up is you're passionate about it. And why does working with these people get you fired up?
Huh. Well, so go back to the learner side of the equation, that curiosity, what makes people tick? And the relator side, building deep understanding, opening up and seeing behind the scenes. That strategic side, my goal is to help, and it's part of my journey. I want to become my best self. So how do I help others become their best self? That achiever side of the equation of making it actionable, practical, progressive, growth-oriented. And then the connectedness side has a bit of that spiritual connotation of looking for hidden purpose, hidden meaning, hidden residual talent, that potential that may not be in there, and how to bring it to life. So yeah, it taps all 5. But somebody else with a different 5 could be equally engaged in the pursuit of helping people become their best self, and teams to become their best for different reasons.
This is the time where I watch John process like 8 questions and try to decide which one to ask.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit like a fire hydrant with you guys. So, and I'm trying to be careful of not just, like you said, this is so second nature to me. You can wind me up and I'll just go an hour on this, but the questions are very helpful in terms of making them specific to your audience.
Oh, for sure. And Rex, you've had a huge influence on me and, my own personal growth on this journey and learning how I'm wired. I think that point of how do we learn how to communicate what's happening inside to other people, I think that's really important. And I kind of love some of this framing in terms of, so there's the one-on-one that you talk about, right? The manager-employee relationship, but there's also, right, you take this to the larger team environment.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
right, it's again converting this to how do I help other people become their best selves, and what do I need to modulate in my thinking to get away from that fixed mindset, because that's a lot of times our behavior, right? We're just we're
Yeah.
wired to have a certain expectation that, okay, we all know what the job is that we're trying to accomplish, whatever it is. And so there are tasks. And so we become very task oriented. And we don't necessarily stop to think about what does everyone need in this situation? Or am I asking in a group setting, am I asking the wrong person to do the item that needs to be taken care of?
Yeah. And that's a great question to ask because, like any team, right? Basketball, football, whatever, you don't want to have a guard play center on the team. So when you have a team, that gives you the opportunity to begin to identify roles and leverage. And a lot of times that conversation comes out organically when people are discovering what they're passionate about, what they do best, their experience. And the best place for teams to be able to figure that out, the team has a goal. We have these players. So how do we work well together? And when we share what I think I look like at my best, the things that engage and excite me, and I find, for example, and this was an FAA situation, one of the challenges in the FAA for managers is that they're dealing with air traffic controllers who are union. Most do not have a college degree, and they're paid six figures, right? So entitled young kids that need a drill sergeant. And if you're not wired like a drill sergeant, then you can get run over. So these two supervisors came up with they were a good yin and yang. And that's part of it too. I'm not complete. I need somebody who loves the details and can get into the details and do that. Part of the research we did when I was at TAG is that we found that 80% of what you're doing on a daily basis, somebody else can do better. And it's in their sweet spot. 10%, 10 to what you're doing, 10 to 15 is stuff that you're uniquely good at. Others could do it at that level, but this is where you shine. There's 5% that it's magic. What you do is magic. Now, the key for all of us is how do we shift more of the time we're spending into that 15 and 5% zone and partner with people who can handle the 80% zone that we're in. And, and that's personal growth. And as a business owner, I've been finding more and more where my most valuable time goes. And then I'm finding other people who love to do the stuff I could do, but it's effort and work and maybe not as good, stuff I hate. And then that, and that's allowed us to grow, especially this year. I mean, this year we've hit a new quantum leap in our productivity because we continually find what are you good at, what are you not. You guys know Nathan, and we've been working on that all year. What are you really good at? You're taking on a lot, what is your sweet spot? We've found that for him, and it's released his productivity. It's helped me immensely, and we found other folks that can do the stuff that has to get done, and it's in their sweet spot.
It keeps coming back to the same thing. It keeps coming back to, do you know who you are? Do you know what you're good at? Do you know how you're wired? And how can you apply that to the right tasks? It's the engagement conversation that we've been having for a decade plus. It's, are you doing the work that you should be doing that really gets you fired up on all 8 cylinders? Most of the time, not all of the time. That's not practical. We're going to still have to do some of the stuff.
Yeah. Like I got to cut the grass, I got to do 7 acres of getting on a 0-turn mower and a bush hog, and not my favorite task, but it's got to get done. Now, the caveat to that, Kyle, is that you've got to be on a team where you feel safe enough to say, I don't think this is the best use of my talents. I can make a better contribution here. What you don't want is somebody opting out because they say, I'm not so good at that. I shouldn't be doing that. What you want them to always tell you is, where can I add more value? One of the exercises I do on the teams that I work with is I have them write down, what's the value you bring to this organization? And have them try to quantify it. And so there's 2 levels of value for an organization. There's top line value, that's revenue. There's bottom line. And it's either direct impact or indirect impact. Now, I don't expect anybody to have the right formula or algorithm, but once they've looked at, here's how I contribute, here's where I think it helps us, customer retention, lowering cost, better efficiency, greater team dynamic, and they begin to articulate that. Now they've got a sense of ownership, a sense of pride, but even more importantly, they've got the ability to keep their own score. So that now when you come into me, I can ask a couple questions. Where did you provide value in this last quarter? And where did your genius show up in doing that? And then I'll ask, what do you want to improve upon? And then where did your kryptonite get in the way? Where did you miss opportunities to show up at your best or provide value? And how would you change that? That's a completely different conversation than 99% of the manager conversations go on performance, right? It's here's what you did well. Here's what I want you to do. No ownership in that. Plus the manager has to make it up because they don't remember and they don't know.
Well, that's why you have the people do a self-performance evaluation before you meet with them, so that the employee can tell you all the good things that they did, and then you can judge them.
Yeah, right. Well, and again, we're trying to make this, the role of the manager is the guide, helping them continue to get better, get more self-aware. It doesn't mean, when somebody says, how did you show up, that you take it at face value, because our process is you filled out your version of what that employee looks like at their best in their kryptonite. Now it's kind of a share and compare type of situation.
Yeah, and that goes back to what, John, you were talking about, where most of us, you have the job description and that's what you're being evaluated on, not who you are and what you bring. It's did you do the tasks assigned to that particular title.
Exactly. Well, and so, Rex, I want to go back to something you mentioned just a moment ago in terms of you have to feel that you're in a safe enough space where you can raise that point of vulnerability. What if you're not in that safe space? Are there things that you have come across where you can, maybe you have to work on creating the safety, right? Like, what do you think in terms of that?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say this works for everybody, but I've been in those situations where I couldn't operate in the way I felt best. And my answer to that is perform. Don't ask for something else if you haven't performed in the first area that you've been given responsibility for. So what's worked for me is if I perform and deliver, that gives me credibility and latitude to move into some other ways of doing it. And so, like Kyle said, we're always going to be in situations that are not ideal, that don't naturally play to our strengths, but that's a growth. That's that dilemma thing. How do I adapt to the point where I can perform in this situation and do it through my strengths? So that's the internal growth. That's the growth mindset side. There's probably the statistics are clear. There's more bad bosses than there are good bosses. Only 18% of bosses naturally know and work on this developmental side of things. We know that more than 60% of people leave for one reason alone. Their boss sucks. And so that's more the case. And that's more the reason, this is where you might read Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way, and get some of that stoic mindset of this pressure cooker I'm in, this sucky situation I'm in is for me. When I was basically fired and put into sales, back into sales again, commission sales, with a sales cycle of 18 months, I could have said life sucks and this is terrible, or say, okay, this is about, this is exposed things about me that are out of alignment. My health, my relationships at home, my not living to who I'm really designed. And it was probably a 7 to 10 year process of rebuilding all of that again. So there's no shortcut to gaining mastery. There's no shortcut to resilience. There's no shortcut to becoming your best self. And as we said earlier, it's not difficult to understand, but it's not easy to do. And that separates those. And we know the numbers of people who are willing to do it or not. A good manager can improve that number of people who want to get in the game and become their best self. But the numbers are the numbers for a reason. 70% of people would rather be anyplace else than at work. 20% you're better off paying to stay home than to come to work.
All right. So I'm going to challenge you because we're almost out of time. Leave us on a high note.
Well, the high note is this stuff works. It does. And you guys know that once you've kind of broken the code, then it's that flywheel. It's that virtuous cycle that you created an organization to do just that, because you see that once it dawns on them, once the scales come off their eyes, whatever, it's a religious experience almost, in terms of somebody saying, oh, there's all this stuff that was in me that I've never been able to tap. Now I understand why. And now game on. That's when it really becomes exciting and game on. And so, we can't change the whole world, but the people that we have stewardship for, we can certainly help them flourish and help them pass it to their kids and in their workplace. That's the hope.
That is. And we have to continue to hang on to that and perpetuate it. Talk about a flywheel, keep the flywheel spinning of hope.
Yep.
And those success stories that keep coming out and the people's lives who have been impacted by putting time, effort, and energy into the whole piece around self-awareness. For those of you listening, Rex, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, LinkedIn is where you can find most of my content. My email is very simple, rex@rexmiller.com. I have my website you can go to, and of course you can find all the books on Amazon. So lots of ways to connect. We didn't talk about the ranch and the retreat center. So if you're in Dallas, want to come to a really cool place, have a corporate event or a leadership retreat, River Rose, we just had a group of 16 leaders from across North America here 2 weeks ago. Very cool experience.
It's a beautiful place. I'm glad I got a chance to visit with you when you got over there. It is a gorgeous place. And if you are looking at, like Rex, you said, definitely check it out. And check us out as well at rippleintent.org. We're also on LinkedIn. You can find John, me, Ripple Intent, all the fun stuff there. Feel free to reach out, connect, follow, and ask questions all the time. Rex, thank you so much for your insights,
you guys are
your
welcome.
thoughts.
This was fun.
Yeah,
It went so quickly. So anyway,
they always do. I got to say, they always do. Except when we have, never, I'm not going to go there. No, it does.
Yeah.
It does go quick. We could talk for a long, long time. So thank you. And for everyone listening, we will see you on the next podcast. Take care.
Take care.